Good afternoon and welcome to Rubbin Minds. My name is Isabella Detty. Now we're right in the festive season and we can see a lot of merriment in the air. People are beginning to troop out. We're seeing end of year parties and a lot of noise being made about going to the cinema, blockbuster movies. And we're going to be looking at that during the show. But we're going to start off today's conversation looking at something that has seen an increase in recent times. We've seen social media, the traditional media, replete with news of defamation cases, and we see the police getting involved. And some people online are wondering, where do we draw the line between free speech, freedom of speech, of expression, and defamation? And how far is too far? Should it lead to arrests? Should the police be involved? Or is this strictly a civil issue? Now, joining us to discuss defamation cases and the role of the Nigerian police, we're joined in the studio by an attorney and social commentator in the person of Peter Cole Onele. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Isabella. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Let's thank you for honoring our invitation, and let's get right into the conversation. In layman's terms, what is defamation and how is it different from, say, libel, which we see a lot in the news?
Well, thank you so much. That's a very important question. First, because, I mean, as you mentioned, this is a topic that's been publicly discussed on several platforms, primarily the online platform, currently as we speak. And there's been a lot of opinions and counter opinions and people expressing their views on this. But just to break it down properly, from a legal point of view, when we speak of defamation, what we speak of primarily is simply the publication of a statement or statement, as it were, by an individual who, knowing that those statements are actually false, goes ahead to publish them with the intent or the intention to damage the reputation of that other person whose those statements are made against. And that publication is very important. Now, just to clarify that.
So how does it differ from slander or from a libel?
Well, yeah, the clarity is that defamation itself is the principal offense, however, or the principal, as it were, the norm itself. But the derivative of defamation are slander and libel, where it is oral, meaning that it is not in actual written form, or it is not published in writing. It is said to be slander. So if I was to say something here at this point in time on air, it could be termed as slander. Whereas if it was, say I wrote a book about it, or went on air to actually did write it down, that would be libel. So libel is defamation in written form, while slander is defamation in oral form as well.
And you know, you spoke about the intent. So it's about the intent to cause harm or to malign someone's reputation. Now, what if someone just makes a false statement out of ignorance? Can that be argued as defamation?
Well, I think that question is important. First, to clarify that, as we all know, well, when we speak of ignorance, ignorance of the law is not actually an excuse, right, as a way. So the issue of defamation is very important because, as I said, publication is vital. So what was said must have been said with an intent to injure. First, it must be false. The statement that was made must be false. So where the statement that was made is not proven to be false, it does not constitute defamation. And that's why one of the primary and principal defenses defamation is truth. So if you're able to prove that, what the other person believes to have been defaming in actual fact or defamatory was true, then in that sense, that would not amount or account to defamation. However, generally speaking, as I mentioned, in terms of publication, for instance, if a book was written, the usual requirement for defamation to be proven is that there was a third party who had heard those words being said. Using this example, for instance, if there was a third party who heard me say those words, that's enough to justify and to prove that those words, if they were insulting, if they were meant to disparage the third party, and if they were false, that's the fundamental part of it, then they were in fact defamatory.
The falsehood.
Yes.
Okay. We're also joined via Zoom by a policy consultant, Timi Olagunju, who's also a lawyer. So, Timi, welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you again, and Peter as well.
Yeah. So let's go into get right into the conversation. When someone gets defamed, what's the first step to take? If they say, look, I've been defamed, there's a falsehood about me that has been published, should they start calling you as a lawyer? Should they go to the police? Should they go on social media? What should they do?
So first approach is, in cases of defamation, there are two approaches. First is civil or criminal, right? And what is defined as criminal is dependent on what the law says is criminal. So in that context, if the law of a particular state, for example, in the context of Lagos State, defamation, whether libel or slander, that's verbal or written, that defamation, as Peter has rightly stated, does not constitute a criminal case. You cannot carry on a criminal case in Lagos. And so, for example, other states in that context, for example, maybe Ekiti State and a few other states might still consider defamation as a criminal case based on, certain provisions of the law, one of which is the criminal code.
So I will try to reconnect again with Timmy. Must be the connection. So I'll move to you, Peter, and I'll let you also build on what he has said. So it now has to do with the states to determine whether you get the police involved or you get your lawyer involved. But for that person who has been defamed, what rights do they have?
Well, I think a good starting point would be to just refer to what Barrister Timi Olagunju said earlier, which is the fact that for a distinction to be made between criminal defamation and civil defamation, again, there's a very clear difference between what constitutes criminal defamation and civil defamation. Now, to build a bit of a background, my viewpoint now, this is my viewpoint, and this is a viewpoint that is supported by legal jurists across different schools of thought, which is the fact that criminalization of defamation in itself is antithetical to a democratic society. Now, the criminalization of defamation has been used as a tool, as an oppressive tool, to clamp down on free speech and also primarily on the freedom of journalists, of social critics to be able to say and speak against evils perceived in the society. So you oftentimes see that being weaponized as a tool against the individual. But just to get into the nitty-gritty.
But if you say that it's based on falsehood,
yes. If
the person who quote and unquote makes the defamatory statement can prove that this isn't false, that this is based on evidence, then can that person still be threatened or be threatened with the fact that they might go to jail or prison time or getting the police involved?
Well, that's where the line has to be drawn, again, like Barrister Timi mentioned. Primarily, when the issue is decriminalization of defamation, then it is a subject matter of the law as it is. And the law as it is a subject matter of, is it enacted in the laws of the state or in the laws of the federation? As far as I know, to my knowledge, legally speaking today, the concept of criminal defamation is a federal offense as well. It is an offense that is traceable to the provisions of the Criminal Code Act. As an act, it's an act of the National Assembly.
So which supersedes? If you have a state like Ekiti, for example, that's criminal, and you have a state like Lagos where it's civil, does the state come first or the federal comes first?
Well, let me just clarify, for all intents and purposes, that I am not aware of a provision in the Criminal Code of Ekiti State today, which is the Criminal Code law of Ekiti State in itself, that criminalizes defamation per se. In fact, just to draw a quick reference to the very popular scenario that everyone's familiar with, the case of Dele Farotimi and his eventual arraignment before a magistrate court. Of course, mentioning that this matter is sub judice, which means that it's before a court of law, so I would not be going into the merit of the case or otherwise. But just for purposes of enlightenment, it should be noted that as far as the law is concerned, the issue of defamation criminally in Nigeria today is principally a derivative of the Criminal Code Act, which is a federal legislation. So, as aware, that offense can only be prosecuted successfully by the Attorney General of the Federation or somebody who is acting from an order or a permission from that office. As of today, I am not aware if that is the case in Ekiti State, and we've seen that play out as well. So, but just bringing this down into the context of that same scenario, one would believe, I would like to just quote and refer to a very popular reference that one of the very most respected legal personalities in Nigeria today, Rafa Babalola himself, had written in 2018 about the issue of the criminalization of defamation. And he said in that particular piece, which is published on Babalola University's website, that personal squabbles between individuals need not become a subject matter for the court or for the police to wade into. Now, in that same article, he laid down certain principles which he believed to be the test for when defamation should be criminalized. However, notwithstanding these principles that have been laid down, the reality is that if, as an individual, there is a reasonable proposition as regards the character of the person being damaged, I would think that a remedial approach as opposed to a punitive approach would be the most suitable one. Knowing that for criminal matters, punitive measures are primarily, but civil actions allowed and they give rise to remedies.
Okay.
Yeah, and additionally...
Okay, we have Timmy back on Zoom, and I would like Timmy to weigh in to where the police should get involved. To just piggyback off what Peter Cole has been speaking about on where do we start to draw the line when we're criminalizing it or it remains civil? And should there be redress sought outside of the courts, maybe come to some kind of amicable agreement that it doesn't even get to the courts, let alone get the police involved?
Well, interestingly, Barrister Peter has laid a very interesting foundation on the subject matter. I just want to quickly refer to Section 39 of the Ekiti law, criminal law, which specifically talks about some measure of publication of false news or statement, and that it must be such that it is likely to incite fear, alarm, or harm in public peace. And so Section 39 of the criminal law in Ekiti State states that, but it puts certain exception to it, that it must be such as incite fear, alarm, or harm public peace. That being said, when you look at the issue of defamation as a whole, and in exception of defamation of based on electronic publications under the Cyber Crimes Act, or defamation of federal institutions or officials, defamation as it's on its own is not under the exclusive or concurrent list. It is a residual matter. And so you should expect that this kind of case would have come basically under Section 39 of the Ekiti law, rather than, the criminal code, which is a law that was passed in 1916, pre-independence. That being said, it's important to also contextualize the arrests in that sense. So, for example, when an arrest is to be made for a warrant that was issued by a court in Ekiti, it is expected under the Criminal Justice Act, which is applicable in Ekiti State, although not in Lagos, that the police officers in charge, subsection 1, section 46, subsection 1, states that the police officers in charge must, at the place, the state they want to issue the warrant, officially inform the police in that particular state as to the fact that they want to do that. Then secondly, they must bring the matter. For example, in the case of Dele and Afe Babalola, you'd see that Dele's office was in Lekki Phase 1, which meant that by that law, they should have brought the case within the jurisdiction or division of the court there to be able to get the go-ahead. And the reason why the court specifies that is that so that they can ensure that the person being arrested is the same person that is on the warrant in the other states. so that you don't have a case of mistaken identity or whisking out somebody who is not supposed to be arrested. Then subsection 3 of that same act allows for that same court to decide whether to grant the person bail and inform the court in Ekiti that, look, we've granted this person bail, but the case can proceed. And so if you ask the key question, was the police in Lagos State informed about any of such arrests? Is there any official document to that effect? Right? Because he was arrested on the 3rd and whisked away to Ekiti and arraigned on the 4th. So it seems that the evidence, which evidence is the end of argument, goes to the effect that certain procedural breaches have happened in terms of the arrest of Mr. Dele Farotimi in that sense. So it's important that we look at that in that sense. Very important, because if the foundation be destroyed, what can the makeup artists do than build, than put powder? Rather than have a powdered case that seems like a persecution rather than a prosecution, right?
Okay.
The foundation of the procedure in which the arrest was initiated is in itself faulty under the law. And that's
you spoke about some procedural breaches. I'll move to you, Peter Cole. And, what we're beginning to see become very rampant is where these things happen and the police gets involved and we don't know what is happening to these people, and there's almost that fear and intimidation that if you say something wrong, you publish something wrong, whether it's based on falsehood or your personal opinion, like you just clarified in one of your answers, there's that possibility that you could end up in jail and you end up, in front of a magistrate court. And what does that say about our democratic processes? What does it say about our freedoms to expression and free speech?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I spoke to that previously. I'll just restate again that when we speak of the very essence of democracy, what is fundamental to a democratic system is the respect and the enforcement of the fundamental human rights of the members of the public. And at all times, it is sacrosanct and it is fundamental for the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression of members of the public to be highly respected. Now, at all times, the line becomes blurred when the issue of defamation comes into play. And that's why I think it's important that we should also remember that at all times, any party who believes that there has been a case of defamation against them has the right to ventilate these issues before a civil court. Now, I had earlier alluded to the issue of the nature of civil actions to be remedial in nature as opposed to criminal actions which are typically punitive. What it means is that if, for instance, a party was to pursue a civil remedy for the issue of defamation, then that party would have the right to be able to approach the court to, for instance, seek relief such as a retraction, an apology, or certain compensatory damages, which I believe to a very large extent. Contextualizing this, if you should allow me, contextualizing this, because this matter, for instance, is one between a legal colossus, as it were, in the Nigerian legal space today, Area Febabalola,
we're
and also
almost
in
out
renowned...
of time.
Yeah, no problem.
And I would just like to get Timmy very briefly.
Very well.
And this has to do with the involvement of the police, because what we're now seeing is that the police get involved, they detain people, the manner in which it is done. It's almost like the police are now running some sort of boarding house where they're just keeping people in against their will. What do you have to say in a minute or less?
Well, the truth about it is that, yes, the police needs to do better in terms of following procedures. And this is important for justice, not just to be done, but to be seen to be done. However, not all police officers are bad. For example, the same case that was brought in Ekiti was also brought by Tony Elumelu before the police in Lagos State. And they invited Mr. Dele for question in that sense. And the matter was never a public issue at all. And so I think that there are certain elements in the police that give a bad name to the police. And it's important for the IG to step in this sense, particularly even the issue of brandishing guns in public. I think any IG that can ensure that guns are not brandished in public like a militarized era will do well. And I call on the president to do something about this matter in that sense, because it's a national issue.
Thank you very much, Timi Olagunju, a lawyer and policy consultant, and also to our guest in the studio here, Peter Cole Onele, attorney and social commentator, for your contributions on this very important topic. We'll now be going on a quick break. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Rubbin Minds. Now, December is that time when we see a lot of families bond over movies. There's an uptake in cinema attendance. We hear sold out. And if you probably go on one of the popular days, you will find out that you might have to wait till the next viewing time to watch your favorite movie. And a lot of film producers make real work towards ensuring that families are entertained. So there's a bit for everyone to stay entertained during this period. Now, to discuss the joys of December and how it relates with the creative economy, cinema-going culture, and even the viewing experience of our African stories on screen, I have with me the Chief Content Officer at Film One, Ladun Awobukun. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Ladun. So what is it about December when it comes to the cinemas? Like, I'm sure you see record numbers, and it's not just even for one genre of movie, it's across the cinema halls. I've had the situation where you have to wait till a movie becomes available. You're forced to watch what is available at that period. So why December against other months?
I think generally as people, we like to enjoy ourselves and have fun. And especially with families, when you think of December generally, irrespective of what demographic you're in, December is like for family. It is time that you spend with your children or time that you spend with your spouses, if that relates. And that has now translated to cinema, because cinema has now become one of the lifestyle options that people would make in those decisions. I mean, relatively it's cheaper than just going to a regular restaurant, especially if you live in Lagos, right? So you see a lot of people that perhaps their offices have closed on the mid-December, and this is the option that they will pick. Let's take the children with, if you have any help, to go see a movie. You have some popcorn, you have a few drinks, and then the films are now bigger, during that holiday time. We also have the people that come back home, the IJGBs that come during December, and that makes it fun because you see people that perhaps you haven't seen in a year or in a few months, and everyone just sort of has fun. So December is for that sort of enjoyment, and over the years we've seen it grow in a linear fashion, actually, December to December.
Okay. And what does that mean for cinema owners? What does that mean for creators or filmmakers, people across the value chain? Is it just about cash out season? Is there a way they can leverage on successes to drive, that uptick throughout the years, even when the IJGBs go back and the offices resume?
Absolutely. Obviously, you're going to leverage on it, right? Last year, December performance in cinema, just based on box office revenue, was 20% of the entire year, just that month. So when that happens, you leverage on it, right? But what you say is right. We want to create other experiences on other months, because the cinema is open all year round, right? And that's what a lot of people are doing, both filmmakers and cinemas. They're creating things around the holidays, because again, the holidays, most people are working. I was reading something that said that even people are working longer now. When we're much younger, our parents only stopped work at late 50s, early 60s. Now people are working longer, right? But in the holidays, people typically have some time off. So whether it's Easter, whether it's Eid, whether it's Christmas, we're creating experiences, and a lot of cinemas and filmmakers are creating films or content for that period to leverage on that family bonding time, and to leverage on the numbers. So it's not only cash, although, I mean, these are all businesses and they do need to make profit, but it's also building those experiences that, because of how busy our lives are, we may not be able to sort of do or achieve at another time.
A lot of movies come out during this period. Here in Lagos, for example, you see different billboards carrying different movies. Filmmakers are already doing the marketing rounds. And it's not just the cinemas. We're now seeing the streaming platforms. We're also seeing social media platforms like YouTube. We're seeing a lot of people leverage on that period of December of merriment and festivity. And I wonder, does this mean competition, or is there a way for both to leverage each other?
I would say a bit of both. There have been collaborations that have happened in these seasons, and that's what we like to promote. We like that. But then there's competition, and that's normal. I think that as it happens in the cinema culture, I would say it even happens in fast-moving consumer goods as well during those periods. So there's competition, but people are collaborating as well. There's definitely enough for everyone to sort of enjoy. And although this year we are seeing a mammoth number of films coming out in all the Decembers that we have had, we've never had this number of big films coming. So I mean, it's touch and go. There are a few forecasts on how people think that it will play out this year, but I mean, I guess we'll see, you know. But yeah.
And you know, with the cinema, it means movies, it means revenue for filmmakers, but it also means revenue for people in the food sector, like you said, popcorn, drinks, and then there's the whole merchandising and the add-on experiences now with cinemas offering restaurants and offering opportunities to do your birthday and the rest. What does this mean for our GDP? What does this mean for the creative economy? Is investing in the cinema culture a viable option, and should this be encouraged by the government?
100%. I think that much more than anything else, especially in this particular ecosystem, this is content that is created on the soil for the people on the soil, like it is done here. So everything, you can see that people are taking attention to it because the films are getting better, the stories are getting much stronger, and people locally, there's this new word everyone is saying, local to glocal, which means global and local together, because people internationally are taking notice, and people locally that typically won't watch Nollywood are now, it is now a valid option. Like there's Mufasa, and then there's Everybody Loves Jennifer, and people are like, okay, which one am I going to watch, because it's just as good, you know. So when that sort of thing happens locally, when filmmakers are providing, or rather creating content that is so good that it is now a should we watch Hollywood or Nollywood this year or this month, that's when I feel like the government should take notice, because this is number one, the number of jobs that it's creating with people employed in the cinemas, the number of people, the vendors that we're using, whether it's people creating chairs or fixing the lights in the cinemas, or people serving, like whether it's popcorn, yogurt, all of that, the people that are doing the tickets as well, the number of hands that are using to build the premieres. There's so much going on in this time that, and a lot of it is bootstrapped. A lot of it is people just sort of funding privately. There are some initiatives that have been set up, but they're not enough. We're too many, and there are too many creators. So, but when the government steps in, there will be, even globally, will be looked at differently.
And what's the potential like? Because I know in more developed climes, like say California as a state alone, not even the entirety of the US, you know, there's a huge part of their revenue that comes from that Hollywood cinema culture, movie making. So what can we look at in Nigeria? What's that potential for the creative economy when it comes to cinema and movie making?
The potential is, it's definitely in millions and millions of dollars. I would say somewhere in the range of 100 million at least. Because if you look at Lagos alone, let's even just look at Lagos, in the cinema culture, there's 45% of everyone that goes to the cinema in terms of box office revenue is from Lagos. A lot of the films are made in Lagos. A lot of creatives move to Lagos. It doesn't mean that it's not happening in Asaba and in the north, in Kannywood, which is the northern films, is also doing well. The potential is, and people are using little to get a lot. What they're looking for is, believe in us, give us that investment and see what we can do with it. And the few filmmakers that have gotten access to that have shown that this is what happens when you put money in us. This is what happens when we get a bit of belief in it. You see things that are competing internationally. You have some Nollywood films that have been #1 on like for the streaming in Korea and stuff like that. It's because some investment was put into them, and that exposure has created that avenue for them to also perform on a global scale. That is very, very, very possible, especially with things that are local languages, whether it's Yoruba or Ibibio or Hausa. That is where the potential, I would say, sits for me.
Now, I want us to move back to the rivalry between, say, the streaming platforms, the digital platforms, and the cinemas. Because for you to go to a cinema, you have to spend money on your transport. When you get there, you probably have to buy food, and then you have to wait, maybe pay for parking. Meanwhile, if you just pay for a streaming platform, you can take your time to watch. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to spend any extra money. And same thing for even the free-to-air digital platform. So what can cinemas do to make it more enticing for people to spend that extra money? Like, what's the difference? Because it's still the same movie they're coming to watch when you think about it.
I mean, I won't say there's a rivalry. I would say that they complement each other. There's space for the SVODs, which is the subscription VODs, Netflix, Prime, etc. There's space for the cinema, which is the cinema experience. There's space for the AVOD free content on YouTube, etc. But what makes cinema special is the experience, is that sitting at home, whilst it's comfortable and you're at home, etc., you can't compare it to the sound that is coming from a screen, from a cinema screen, or the visual. There's something that, like, I was watching one Marvel, I think it was Deadpool and Wolverine, and the comments from like 100 different people. I don't know how many people have living rooms that 100 people can sit in, but the comments from there, the reaction, and then the popcorn is nicer when you get it in the cinema. So that's my opinion. No, but I think that it's the experience that is what it is, and a lot of the big cinemas right now also have restaurants. Some even have the facilities where you can even eat whilst watching the film as well. So what cinema is selling is a certain level of convenience, because again, you don't have to cook it at home. It's the experience of bonding, whether it's with your friends, with your family, and then you don't have to clean after because somebody's doing that. And it is the sound, it is that experience. So yeah.
Let's look at the numbers now, because we've seen a movie cross ₦1 billion mark. Is that what we're going to expect this year? What are the financials showing for this year up until December? And what are the projections? Are we looking to cross the 2 billion mark for one movie, 3 billion? Speak to us about that.
Yeah, so last year we had one movie crossed actually we had two, Wakanda Forever, 1 billion, and Tribe Called Judah did 1.4 billion. This year, I think that definitely the 2 billion mark is definitely in play. Last year, we had 3 major Nollywood films release, and I think 2 major Hollywood films release. This year, we have 5 Nollywood films releasing, and they're all big films. And then we also have a king, which is Mufasa. You have to think about it, that Lion King, which released in 2019, did 300 million in cinemas. So when it comes again in 2024, you can imagine how that's going to be. And you have Sonic, that always does well in cinema. So we have about at least 7 big films. If there are a few scenarios that can play out in terms of, say, in the perfect world, all of them maximize and all of them sort of do well based on what it is that's expecting. But I would say that is a less likely situation. What is more likely is that there will be 3, maybe 4 that would outperform all the others. And that's typically what happens in all the other years that this has played out. But the 2 million mark and over the 2 million mark is certainly in play. Sorry, 2 billion, I beg your pardon. 2 billion mark is certainly in play. And who knows, maybe we'll see another 1 billion as well film go on. I think that is going to be, like I was saying, last year, December alone did 1.7 billion. In fact, post-COVID, all the Decembers that we've had, 21, 22, 23, have all done 1 billion, at least over 1 billion. Last year was 1.7 billion, and ticket prices were maybe 3,600 per ticket. Right now, we are forecasting that the ticket prices will be around 5,500. If you just do the math of that, you can see that we will be close to a 3 billion month. So we're going from a 1.7 billion month, December 2023, to a possible 3 billion month in December. So it's exciting times that all of us are just looking at the numbers
and smiling to the bank.
Well, I hope, that's the hope. And whether it's filmmakers, whether it is cinema owners, even the people that are the vendors that are selling food as well, the hope is that everyone sort of makes bank this year, just because it's been a tricky year. So it'll be good for all of us to smile.
Now, I want you to weigh into something like some of the streaming platforms that have come into Nigeria have changed strategies, whether it's to focus less on producing originals or to focus on other markets or to just focus on getting content licensed. So that means take your movie to the cinema, it does well, we might decide we want to put it on the platform or not. What are the implications for cinema owners, but at the same time for filmmakers who maybe had their hopes on going on reaching a global audience? Because the cinema audience is still reaching a local audience.
So my thoughts on that is, look, for studios, especially people that do the big projects, what that means is that people will just produce fewer films, but bigger films. It's the only thing that makes sense, because you don't want to go back to the point where you are now making films that, from a quality production value point of view, it can't actually go global. So our expectation is that the films would the number of films that are produced maybe per studios would reduce, but the quality of the films would still remain the same or bigger. In terms of reaching internationally, the opportunity is still there, whether it's through global theatrical platforms, which is you're going to cinemas abroad, and also the streamers as well. The opportunity is not, it hasn't vanished. It's just been restructured, you know, so that's my take on it.
And are you seeing people coming to collaborate more? Because like one of the biggest films, like The Wedding Party, Correct. Was the coming together of four different companies. Is that something you're expecting to see?
100%, and we're already seeing it. We're having those conversations. Everyone is, you know, that diversified risk mentality, which is, I still want to do this big film, but there's no chance that I'm taking this risk on my own. So we're seeing that more, and I think that rolling into the first half of 26, we are going to see that happen with a lot of big IPs or big filmmakers, and that really is the way it's what is done globally. So maybe this is what needed to happen for all of us to come together a bit more. So whether it is co-producing films or co-distributing films, I expect that would be a pattern, somewhat of a pattern going into 25.
And we know that cinema screens are still comparably low. Yeah. So what is the plans for, say, a cinema chain as yours, which has the largest across Nigeria, to expand into other regions? Are these only based on commercial facts, like, oh, if we go into this city, this is how much we can make? Or is there other reasons why you might feel we need to open more cinemas to reach more audiences? Or like, I'll like to look at the example you gave of Ibibio, for example. You want to do an Ibibio language movie, you need to have cinemas in places where Ibibio is Correct. Spoken, and not just one cinema.
Yeah. The factor that goes into that, and believe it or not, it's not cash first. It is the audience. It is, we do a lot of polls and a lot of exit polling on how old are the people that predominantly live in those cities, and that's what guides the decision. Because the people that would make that conscious decision to go out and pay 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 naira for a ticket is a certain age. It's the millennials, actually. It's usually that 26 to 35, or maybe 25 to 35 age. So it's a play of, are these cities that have universities in them? Are these cities that have college of education in them? So those sort of decisions is what really drives where we put the cinemas, or where we suggest to do the cinemas. The next phase is where it now gets commercial, because cinemas are very, very expensive to set up. So and then they're set up, your costs are literally dollarized because the projectors are not made in Nigeria.
And I think that's where government needs to come in.
Thank you. That was my next point. Yes, that's where we need the government. Once we're able to get that support, you would see so many cinemas come up so quickly, and that helps. It means that we can make our money in Nigeria and not really rely on anyone else.
Okay, thank you very much, Ladun Awobukun, Chief Content Officer at Film One, for your contributions, and good luck with 3 billion and counting at the box office.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to Rubbin Minds. Now, for our entertainment segment, we're joined via Zoom by Nigeria's foremost comedian, actor, filmmaker, and you know him as Ayomakun AY. He's thrilled us, entertained us with movies, with comedy shows, and other things as well. We're joined by AY. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Good afternoon.
So, when you look at your journey, will you say it's nature? It's always been in you to pursue a career in entertainment, whether it's comedy or filmmaking, or will you say it's nurture, like being in a place like Warri? That's what everybody does. What was it for you to get into entertainment?
Oh, well, entertainment has always been a major part of the journey of my being. In the sense that was started off way back from being part of dramatic societies, being part of different entertainment units from growing up, and well, also working with the king of comedy when I gaining roads into the comedy industry, talking about Alibaba, being his personal assistant, further, gave me that exposure and inroad into doing what I'm doing today.
So it's a mix of both. Now, I want us to look at your early days, and I like how you've alluded to it in your first answer about the place of mentorship, the place of apprenticeship, working with an Alibaba who really is the king of comedy when you look at it in Nigeria. What was the defining moment that it went from, should I say, your Elisha to Elijah moment?
Whoa, the very big break for me started with stand-up comedy. So I was with Alibaba as his personal assistant. We were in Abuja for a gig. And before then, I used to find a way to open shows for him when he was running the comedy club. So we were at this Night of 1,000 Laugh event, this very big one. So backstage, someone said to him that, AY made some jokes at Fantasyland the night before, and somebody like AY should be on stage. And the minute that was said backstage, Alibaba said he was going to quickly have a conversation with Mr. Oppo Williams, the owner of Night of 1,000 Laughs, to have me come on board. But he didn't do that. He just used his veto power to superimpose my position on stage, and I was able to stir up an apathetic audience. It was awesome. It was winsome. It was way out of the world. And for me, that was the moment. I wasn't even built to perform, but I got paid afterwards. And from that day, I started getting gigs, to be a part of Night of 1,000 Laughs, until we got to a stage where we said, okay, it's not time to go and build your own church. And now we have members.
All right, so now let's look at the transition. Since you started, you spoke a lot about stand-up comedy, but now we're seeing a different kind of comedy with social media, skip makers who we're not seeing as many people say go to those shows. How have you been able to embrace this evolution of the comedy scene in Nigeria, and what do you see happening beyond the skit making era, the YouTubes, the social media?
I mean, social media, I would say, has become a blessing in the sense that it has helped a lot of entertainers. I mean, the skit makers, like you mentioned now, they're making a lot of money from, the social media space, doing what they know how to do best. And in as much as I would say social media is a blessing, it's a combination of both, a blessing and a curse. So it all depends on the area that you want to narrow your interest into. For me, yes, the skit makers, this is something that we've been doing before a lot of them came on board. Some of us here started skit making in this part of the world. But right now, it is a pretty good direction to stick to, in the sense that, in a way, brands are beginning to associate more with the skit makers because of the kind of exposure, the kind of, what's the word now, the engagement it brings to their brands. And, people are naturally very quick to just get stimulated by action or acts that makes them laugh, that engages them, and that is where skit making is winning at this point in time. So for some of us who probably would have said, no, we're too old for this, we are finding our way back into doing the good work we started, and good enough, we still maintain the very huge followers or followership, or people who still follow us and know that they can get engagement from brands like us, and it has been paying bills aside stand-up comedy, aside making movies.
And that transition into filmmaking, were there challenges that you faced? A lot of times when someone starts off one area of the entertainment space, there's a lot of fears that this person might not be right to transition. So an actor wants to move into music, and we've seen examples of where that transition hasn't gone so well. In your own evaluation, do you feel that you're more successful as a filmmaker or as a comedian?
I am more successful as an entertainer, so I operate in all the spaces. The transition per se, a lot of people still find it difficult to understand that, or what I believe that a lot of people don't know about the AY brand is that AY didn't just wake up and said, okay, let me start making films. I am a trained theater artist. I graduated as a theater artist. I majored in directing. Everything that I'm doing today, happens to be what I studied in the university. So it's very easy. So my coming to Lagos, yes, I gained inroad into the entertainment space doing stand-up comedy. But my core calling is movie making. So I've always been an actor for the longest. But it's just that when you find yourself in a space that is being taken over by some people, they just believe that you are a newcomer. A lot of them, they've not even started acting when I started acting, even in this same industry. Back in the days with Sebe Jiro and what have you.
Now, I want us to move to movie making because your movies have broken the box office records. They've done well locally and they've also done well internationally. And what do you think filmmakers need to do to continue to make their stories relevant to a global audience? And what has worked for you? What's that secret sauce that has worked for you as a filmmaker?
Although, the secret is not far-fetched. Nigerians have gone above and beyond the age and time where you just come and give them anything and expect them to take anything. If you have to find yourself in the space, you have to tell our stories and you have to make it as accurate as possible, in as much as some of the stories are designed, are fictional in a way that to make you laugh or to show some sort of occurrence. And you have to create a balance.
Okay.
And in creating that balance, you have to make sure that the production value.
Sorry, I just wanted us to quickly look at the trailer of your latest movie. So if you could just hold on to that thought. We have that. We have that cued, but we'd like you to just give us a snippet, just a preview before we play the trailer. So just tell us what to expect.
Well, The Waiter is a film that a lot of people are already waiting for, that I'm fully aware of. The space in December is looking like a pretty good tough one bet.
So the Waiter, we have people waiting. I love the play of words. I don't know if that was intentional, but I guess the comedic side, the entertaining side coming out. And just looking at the visuals, we're seeing action. We know that Nigerians love those fight scenes. We love those action set pieces. And also, are we also expecting love, betrayal, romance, drama? Can you give us more of a hint of what to expect?
The Waiter is an all-encompassing story, full-blown package. It would definitely blow your mind. As a matter of fact, if I say I've done close to about 9 films, if I say that I've been working as a filmmaker, I will call all of that put together rehearsals compared to what is coming out come December 20th in cinemas nationwide. The Waiter is packaged with action, it's packaged with sensitivity to give you that awesome freshness and satisfaction.
And how did you go about casting? I'm seeing some notable faces. Are we expecting to see maybe some new talent coming out, collaborations? Can you speak to that?
Oh, yes. As a trained theater artist, it's always very easy because I developed the story myself. I got a pretty good writer to do the polishing, one of the best in this part of the world, Kende Joseph, who did justice to all of that. But in casting, I had to sit down with my team, and we even had to audition a lot of people, and then we also had to get some already existing professionals in the industry to create that balance and give the story the needed fetches that we expect it to get. So in casting, in a film where you have the likes of Richard Beaufair,
so you have your crowd favorites and also have some new
Shafi
faces.
Bello, you have Rama Saddam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now
we have some new faces as well. So it's balanced.
Okay. Well, sadly out of time, but we wish you all the best with your feature coming out in the cinemas, and we expect it, of course, to break the box office records. Thank you, Ayomako AY, for being our guest on Rubbin Minds.
Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless you real good.
And that's all we can take today on Rubbin Minds. My name is Isabella Adediji. Do enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and see you same time, same place next week. Good afternoon.